appreciate that. Let's get started this morning with a couple of questions, and I need enthusiastic responses to each question. First one, how many of you are ready to be more successful in the future than you ever were in the past? Raise your hand and say, you bet. Yeah. All right. How many are ready to make more money in the future you ever did in the past? Say, you bet. Yeah. How many are ready to have a good time this morning? Say, you bet. Yeah. How many are ready to walk out those doors better looking than when you first walked in? Say, you bet. Yeah. A couple of you guys right down here didn't answer that last one. You should have, though. I want you to know. I do want to make sure we have a good time today, and normally when I tell folks they're going to have a good time, they think I'm going to do a lot of jokes. Y'all need to know right now I don't do any jokes. Now, I used to do a lot of jokes. I used to do a lot of bald jokes. And then I looked in the mirror one day, decided there wasn't anything funny about that. Being bald is tough. First of all, it's tough on your love life. You think about it. If all the hair fell out of your dog, would you want to pet it? Shoot, that's why I grew a beard. No kidding, before I grew the beard, people thought I looked like a big thumb. I'd walk down the streets and cars would pull over and say, hey buddy, you need a ride? One other reason I grew the beard is because underneath this little bit of hair, I don't have a chin. Now, it's no big deal not having a chin. It does make it hard to change pillowcases, though, I'll tell you that. A couple of good things about not having any hair. First of all, bald guys live longer. Did you know that? I heard about a guy 92 years old. Sent his wife to the doctor one day. Doctor couldn't believe what he found out. In fact, he made her go out to the waiting room and wait a little while. Brought her in a second time, did a second examination, again was astounded at what he discovered. Made her go back out to the waiting room. Finally brought her in a third time, and after the third examination, he said, ma'am, I don't know how to break this to you, but, well, you're going to have a baby. She said, I can't be going to have a baby. I got a husband who's 92. He said, I don't care if he's 192, you're still going to have a baby. She said, well, I better call him and let him know. So she reaches for the telephone. Doctor says, just a minute, that's an old man. I mean, you might want to break this to him really gentle. She said, don't worry, I will. So she dials him up on the telephone. The old man answers the phone, and the first thing out of her mouth, she says, you old coot, you got me pregnant. He said, who is this? I need to let you know a little bit more about me before we go ahead and get started. I grew up on a chicken ranch in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Any of y'all ever been to Muskogee, Oklahoma? Y'all actually from Oklahoma? I'm going to have to slow down then. Y'all may not know this. Oklahoma is an Indian word. It means beautiful. Muskogee is an Indian word. It means not. And I have been through incredible business success, and I've been through total business failure. And now what I do is I go all over the world talking to folks about what I think it takes to be successful. I'll tell you right now, it's just not all that tough. I don't think success is all that tough. You may have been told it is, and you want to believe it is. You see, I think we love the idea that success is very, very hard. We want it to be hard so we'll have an excuse for not doing well. And I just don't think there is an excuse for not doing well. I think it comes down to a handful of good ideas, just very simple ideas. In the last 10 years, I've read over 2,000 books, books that cover thousands of years of information. I still read 2 or 3 books a week on all kinds of topics: customer service, leadership, sales, philosophy, spirituality, religion, how to stay healthy, how to get rich. And after reading a couple of thousand books, this is what I have discovered. There are only 17 good ideas in the whole world. That's it. And we just made them way too hard. Now, I don't have time for all 17 today, but I'll guarantee you you've heard these. And you will be reminded of them here this morning as I go through them. And they're just not that tough. Besides, I've learned it is the simple things that make the biggest difference. I was reminded of that one day when I was standing on my porch, and I have 2 sons. We were out watching a big thundercloud come in. And my youngest son said, Dad, did you realize that cloud right there is 97% water? Now, I did not know that. Guess he had learned that in high school or something, thought it was a good time to share it with me. I didn't think too much about it until a few weeks later I was doing some reading, and I read that a watermelon is 94% water. Did y'all realize that a watermelon missed being a cloud by only 3%? Now, that is not a big difference, but it makes a big difference. So today I'm going to share with you just a handful of good ideas I think make a big difference so you'll be more successful, make more money, and have more fun. Does that sound like a good idea? Say you bet. You bet. All right. First idea is this. We're going to be more successful. We have to take personal responsibility. It all starts right there. We have to take personal responsibility. We're not very good at taking personal responsibility, but let me ask you this. Would your business, would your organization, would this association be a better place to work if every single person within it took personal responsibility for the success of that organization? Would that be a better place? Say you bet. Do people do it? Absolutely not. It's hard. We're not taught to take responsibility. I got these two boys. How many of you are parents? How many of you had parents? That ought to get everybody. I can walk into their room. They can be having a big argument. I say, okay, now who started this? What do they do? Give me one of these, right? I can say, listen, I'm not very happy with this grade. Whose fault was the bad grade? Teacher, right? Obviously, it's the teacher's fault. They're the one who didn't hand in the homework or do well on the test. And I have people come up to me and say, Larry, don't you understand? That's how kids are. No, that's how we all are. We're not taught to take responsibility. It's the hardest thing we do. We've also made it the #1 entertainment show in the world today is not taking responsibility. People who want to lay blame outside of themselves. Do you know what the #1 entertainment show right now on television is in 44 countries? Jerry Springer. Now, how many of y'all watch Jerry Springer? You lie. You lie. It didn't get to be #1 without you guys watching it, see? And I'm always amazed. Every once in a while I'll see it, and I'll see some big old boy on there. And he can't figure out why his wife and his girlfriend have left him. And I just want to say, let me help you. You're big, you're fat, you're stupid, you're ugly, got tattoos from head to toe and only 3 teeth. Get a clue. Do you think he'd take responsibility? No. Wants to lay blame outside of himself. And you see, I think that's how we all are. And yet no journey of success starts until we take personal responsibility. Simple idea, but that's where it starts. Next idea is this. We've got to learn to be more flexible. Flexibility, the key to everything, in my opinion. Flexibility is the key to dealing with change, is the key to dealing with customers. Do you know that the most popular topic from any platform in the world today is the topic of dealing with change? More people in my industry, the speaking industry, are being hired to talk to people about how to deal with change. That just amazes me. It's been around for a pretty good long while. We should have figured it out by now, don't you think? But we haven't. We just haven't figured out how to deal with change. I got a change speech just because everybody asked for it. Now, you've been told already I'm going to talk about change. I do have a little bitty short change speech. And if you're having a problem dealing with the changes going on in your industry, and by the way, is your industry changing? So you bet. Is your association changing? Is it changing right this minute? That's how it is. And if you got a problem with it, you might like this little bitty short speech. This is the speech on how to deal with change. Shut up, stop whining, and get a life. Now, some of y'all like that speech, and some of you don't. And you're saying, but Larry, you don't understand. You're right, I don't understand. Don't care either. Nobody else does either. Big deal. Things are changing. That's just the way life is. Suck it up and move on. Isn't that right? And I have individuals come up to me and say, Larry, you don't understand. My life sucks. I say, let me help you. You suck. Now, I'm right now in the process of writing a new book called Shut Up, Stop Whining, and Get a Life. For a long time, I wasn't going to write the book because I decided the title was so good, didn't need a book. I mean, once you've said that, you've pretty much said it all, don't you think? I did do this. I put it on these shirts. And we always have these shirts where I speak. We got a big table full of them out there today. And what we do is we put these shirts out there. And what I always think is interesting, people will come out there and they always say the very same thing. Everybody does. They always say, you know, I know somebody who needs that shirt. How many of y'all right now know somebody who needs that shirt? See, I get so sick and tired of listening to people say they know somebody who needs the shirt because it's always somebody else. That we did a new run of them and we printed it upside down so you can look down and read it yourself. See, I think we all ought to be told from time to time to just shut up and stop whining. Wouldn't you agree? Say you bet. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the key to dealing with change. You see, if we're going to deal with change, we need to remember what change is all about. Change is about process, always about process. Process is how we do our jobs. How we do our jobs is going to change, isn't that right? Say you bet. Why we do our jobs, our purpose is never going to change. We do our jobs for one reason and one reason only. And don't say it's to make money. We do our jobs for the single reason to serve other people well. Isn't that right? Say you bet. And if we serve them well, that's when we make money. Correct? Say you bet. That's what we need to focus on. That's what change is not about. It's not about why we do things. Why we do things will never change. How we do things will change, and it's going to start changing minute by minute. And you don't like it? Tough. That's just how it is. You can't escape it. You can't get around it. There's no way to avoid it. That's just how it is. That's what change is about, flexibility with how we do things, not about why we do things. Flexibility is also the key to dealing with customers. Wouldn't you agree? Say you bet. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, I don't see a lot of flexibility out there in the world, especially in terms of dealing with customers. I mean, do you get it the way you want it every single time? Customer service has never been worse. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, I go in restaurants anymore, and I'm on the road all the time. I do several of these a year, and I'm on the road a couple of 100 days a year. I stay in lots of hotels. I eat in lots of restaurants. I like to eat out. I'm good at it. I even eat out when I go home. I do. My wife's not a very good cook. I don't care. I did not marry my wife because she could cook. I married my wife because I loved her and she loved me, so who cares if she can cook? Besides, she has a full-time job just like most of you in this room, so why is it any more her responsibility to make sure food ends up on the table than it is mine? By the way, guys, that's called kissing up. We meet in the house at night. It's always the very same discussion. I say, well, what are we going to eat tonight? She always says, I don't care as long as it's expensive. So we go to the airport for a sandwich. And you know, as I travel around, there's one thing I like to eat better than any other thing. I like cheeseburgers. Y'all like cheeseburgers? Man, I love cheeseburgers. I know what cheeseburgers look like, taste like, smell like. I know they got grease on top of the buns, onions fried inside the meat. I know they're not good for you. I don't care. I mean, you got to die of something, right? Might as well be with a good greasy cheeseburger in your hand. And when I travel around, sometimes I even stop and eat a fast food cheeseburger. Now, there's some fast food cheeseburgers I like pretty good. In fact, there's one I just like a whole lot. This fast food chain right here, it's only located in 25 states, so some of you have not had the privilege of eating at one. They're the fourth largest, fastest growing hamburger chain right now in the country, and it's headquartered in my home state of Oklahoma, and it's Sonic Drive-Ins. Y'all ever eaten the number 2 cheeseburger to Sonic Drive-In? Folks, that's the way to go. I pull into this Sonic Drive-In one day. I'm in sort of a big hurry. I get ready to push the button and order the number 2 cheeseburger, and I notice that day they got a special. The special is a black plastic squeeze bottle. Has hot pink writing on the side, a big hot pink straw coming out of the top. Now, I'm sort of attracted to loud colors and strange shapes. I said, man, I got to have the black plastic squeeze bottle with the hot pink writing and the hot pink straw. Just as I'm about to push the button and order it, I notice there's also a problem. That black plastic squeeze bottle with the hot pink writing and the hot pink straw is a Pepsi-Cola promotion. I don't like Pepsi. So I had to make a decision. Could I choke down a Pepsi in order to get that black plastic squeeze bottle? Well, I decided that I can. I push the button, I tell the guy on the other end of the line that I want the number 2 cheeseburger, and I'll take your black plastic squeeze bottle with a hot pink writing and a hot pink straw. He said, sir, what would you like in that? Now, folks, that was a new development. It was perfectly clear that it only came full of Pepsi. In fact, it even had Pepsi written on the side in hot pink. I said, do you mean I get a choice? He said, sir, this is America. He said, you always get a choice. I said, well, then make mine a Mountain Dew. Now, what did it cost him to give me a Mountain Dew instead of a Pepsi? Nothing. What did it do for him? I told you the story, didn't I? Is that important? Say, you bet. Do customers always go away and talk? Absolutely. I watch companies spend millions of dollars on advertising, and sometimes we forget the most important advertising in the whole world is a satisfied customer with a big mouth. And the worst advertising in the whole world is a dissatisfied customer with a big mouth. See, customers always go away and talk. Always. And this guy at Sonic Drive-In, he understood that what his job was that day was to serve and satisfy a customer, and he was willing to be flexible with how he did that. He also reminded me, this is America, this is a democracy. And in a democracy, we vote. And as consumers, we vote. And as consumers, what do we vote with? Our money. What's your job? It's the same as his, it's the same as mine. It's to get people to vote more often and in bigger ways. Isn't that right? So you bet. Takes flexibility. Now, I don't always see that kind of flexibility. I'm still sort of amazed at how bad things are. I go in a restaurant anymore, if the food even shows up, I have a party. I was in a restaurant the other day, the waiter was so obnoxious I couldn't believe it. I said, you don't seem to understand. I can go home and get lousy service for nothing. I was in a retail store, the clerk was so rude to me, I said, you seem to have forgotten the basics of business. You are expense. I am revenue. He didn't have a clue what I was talking about. One day I'm walking through the mall. I have my boys with me. As I walk through the mall, I realize that I need to buy some batteries. Now, I see this store in the mall that I know sells batteries. I'm not going to tell you all the name of the store. I will tell you this. Their first product was a radio. They started in a shack someplace. I walk in the store, I see the batteries on the wall, walk over to the wall, pull the batteries down off the wall, walk up to the counter, put the batteries down on the counter. I put cash money laying right next to the batteries. A guy walks up on the other side of the counter, he looks at the batteries, he looks at my money, he looks at me and my sons and smiles and says, sir, could I have your name, address, and telephone number? Y'all ever been in there? Happens to you every single time. I said, you know, as a matter of fact, no. Now, you want to start having some fun, you get good at saying no. Stores don't have a policy for what to do if the customer will just real politely say no. You don't believe me? When you get back home, you go to McDonald's, you go to the drive-in window, and when you're at the first drive-in window and you hand them your money, they will lean out and say, if you'll just pull up to the next window, we'll hand your food out to you. Just say, no, I think I'm going to wait right here. Now, you'll screw up 300 Big Macs, but I promise the look on their face is worth it. So I said, no, I'm not going to give you my name, address, and telephone number. He said, sir, I've got to have your name, address, and telephone number. Why in the world would you not want to tell me who you are? I said, because this is America. I'd been to Sonic Drive-In. I said, besides, why is it so important for you to get that information? And that's when he told me the number one thing that nobody ever wants to hear. He said, sir, because it is our company policy. I said, I have a customer policy. And my customer policy says for $1.79 worth of batteries, and I'm paying you cash, I don't have to tell you who I am. He puts his hands on a battery, slides them across the counter, steps back and says, sir, we can't do business with you. I said, is that right? Do you have a manager here? He said, we got a manager. I said, I suggest you go get your manager. And he goes in the back, and he comes out with what I recognized right off to be a manager. This kid about 19, who comes walking down the aisle toward the counter with his hand out like this. He gets right across the counter. He puts his finger just like that, about that far from my nose, and he says, Bud, do you have a problem? Now, do you all remember the movie The Blues Brothers? Do you remember in the movie The Blues Brothers when Jake and Elwood are sitting in the front seat of the old cop car, and Jake turns to Elwood and said, Elwood, we got a 6-pack of beer, a full tank of gas, and we're on a mission from God. You put a 19-year-old kid with his finger in my face saying, Bud, do you have a problem? And I become Elwood Blues on a mission from God. I said, I don't have a problem. You got batteries and I got money. In America, we call that a deal. He said, yeah, and you're going to give us your name, address, and telephone number, or you're not getting those batteries. I said, well, it's just not going to happen. He's already told me it's company policy, and I don't care because I got a customer policy. I want you to tell me why it's so important for you to get that information. And that's when he told me the number 2 thing no customer ever wants to hear. He said, sir, because that's the way we've always done it. I said, well, I got good news, because today you're going to get a chance to do it different. At that point, he puts his hands on the batteries, pushes them across the table, steps back and said, we're not doing business with you, and turns around. Now, at that point, my youngest son is going, Dad, can we go? But my oldest son is going, yes. Any of y'all have experience with obnoxious teenage boys? Mine are a piece of work. My oldest son came in at the end of his last semester, threw his report card and his car keys down in front of me and said, there, I'm tired of driving anyway. But at least he took responsibility, see? They travel with me a lot. One day I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I'm over talking on the payphones on a bank of phones just like outside the room here. My son walks up to me with this sign that he tore off the wall. He did vandalize the hotel. It said, house phone is connected directly to hotel operator. He said, Dad, do you know how painful that would be? Now, I'd seen that sign hundreds of times, and I never thought of that. We get off the airplane in Baltimore. We get off the airplane, we run into the men's room in the airport. In the men's room in the airport, hanging right above the urinal is a sign that said, hands-free operation. My son reads that sign, puts his hands in his pockets. He steps up, turns to me and says, cool. He said, Dad, if this thing works, man, we got to get us one of these. So here we stand. I got one kid embarrassed to death, the other one egging me on, and I got this manager walking away. I said, just a second, don't walk away from me. Don't walk away when you got a customer standing right here in front of you with cash money laying on the counter. You see, I don't think they're paying you to walk away from a customer who has money. I think they pay you to figure out something you can do in order to get to keep that money. And after all, I'm the customer. I ought to be able to leave with a product that I came in here willing to pay for, so stop and think about this a minute. He said, all right, let me think. I can see little wheels turning really slow. Finally, he turns around, and he walks back over to the counter, and he walks back to his computer, and he starts to type. In just a minute, he takes my money, and he puts it in the drawer, and he hands me some change. Then he takes those batteries, and he puts them in a bag, and pulls a receipt out of the computer, puts it in the bag with the batteries, hands it to me, and says, there you go, sir, thank you very much. I figured it out. I said, what did you figure out? He said, I just put my name, address, and telephone number on your receipt. Now, this kid is not a brain surgeon, because at this point, he has an unhappy customer walking out the front door of his business, but now I've got his name. I got his address. I've even got his home telephone number. I'm still on a mission from God. He didn't understand. He didn't know what change was all about. And yet here's what's really sad. He did exactly as he had been trained to do. You know people right now who are doing exactly as they have been trained to do, trained to think, and they've missed the point. They're so caught up in policy, so caught up in doing things because that's the way they've always done it, that they've missed the real point, which is why we do what we do, and that is to serve our customers well. Isn't that right? Say you bet. Amen. Next idea is this. I think we have to watch our attitudes. Now, you all have probably figured out by now I'm not much of a motivational speaker. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm billed right now as the world's only irritational speaker. I have friends who call themselves motivational speakers. There was a time in my career I did that. I don't do that anymore because typically if you put a motivational speaker on the stage, you know already exactly what they're going to say. Isn't that right? Motivational speakers will stand up here and say, as long as you've got a good, positive attitude, everything in your life will be all right. You heard them say that? I've had a good, positive attitude all my life, and I have had more crap happen to me. So I've decided that is not true. Having a good, positive attitude won't keep anything from happening to you, but it'll allow you to deal with what does happen to you, and that's what you really need. Isn't that right? Absolutely. We've got to be able to deal with what happens to us. And I'm a positive guy. I really am. I'm so positive that when I travel, I carry a hairdryer. I'm feeling real optimistic. I plug that sucker in, too. And I've also discovered having a good, positive attitude will create more opportunities. Do you need more opportunities in your life? Say you bet. Yeah. We all do. You just got to have the right attitude about it. I told you I'm on the road all the time. I stay in all these hotels. All the time. I can usually find my room a little easier than I can in this one, though. I'll tell you that. So every time I walk into a hotel, I have the same routine. I do it that way every single time. That's why it's called a routine. When I walk into the room, I grab the remote control. Y'all do that? First thing I do. It's primarily a guy thing. See, I really believe women are superior to men in every single way except that right there. Guys, that's all we've got, you know. That's right there. Second thing I do is I turn on the lights because I have discovered people steal light bulbs out of hotel rooms. And then the rooms are clean during the day when the windows are open, so they don't always turn on the lights. And if you don't check them when you go in, you can leave, come back at night, and you find yourself in the dark. Third thing I do is I always look at the towels because I like good towels. So I walk into this room in Dallas, Texas. I hit the door, I grab the remote control. The remote control has 58 buttons. I said, now this is going to be a good stay. I turn on all the lights, they all come on. I go into the bathroom to look at the towels, and there is this sign in the bathroom. I took this one. It says, please do not steal our towels. And if you do, you will be charged $5 for each one you take. Now, folks, that sign offended me because I'd never even thought about stealing their towels until then. I said, you know, these folks are pretty proud of their towels. I reached up on the shelf, pulled the towel down off the shelf. Now, folks, this was a towel. The towel was that tall. It's taller than I was. The towel was that wide. It was that tall. It was that wide. It was thick. It was fluffy. It was soft. It was only $5. I mean, I've been shopping. I know that's a $20 towel. So I left him a note, said, I'm taking 4. Bill me 20. See, opportunities are everywhere. Next, I think this. I think that we have to lighten up. Y'all agree with that? Say you bet. Yeah. I do. I think we have to lighten up and have more fun. Now, I know people, there are some that just don't know how to have a good time. We probably got people right here in this room who are going to die of terminal professionalism. If you didn't get that, and believe me, we all know who you are. And you are irritating us. I know there are people who don't have a sense of humor. I run into them. I checked into a hotel in Washington, D.C. It was the Mayflower Hotel. I was standing getting my key from the front desk clerk, and he said, "Sir, you're in room 711. I said, "Oh, craps." He said, "Is there going to be a problem with that room?" No sense of humor. I was doing a convention in Cancun, and I speak there a whole lot. It's become a very popular convention city. My wife was with me on this one. We were walking through one of the little malls in Cancun, and it was one where all the designer stores are. And there was a Ralph Lauren store, and a Hilfiger store, and a Gucci store, and a Guess store, one right after the other. And as we passed the Guess store, out in front of the Guess store was a big old boy. Now, y'all know what a big old boy looks like, don't you? Folks, this was a big old boy. And he'd just been in the Guess store, brought him a brand new shirt, said Guess across the front. And he was standing out in front with his shirt on like this. I stopped in front of him and went, "Oh, about $3.75. This fella had no sense of humor at all. My wife said, "I cannot believe you said that to that man." I said, "Well, it said Guess right there." She's still a little amazed at what I do for a living these days. She remembers when I had a real job. I said to her the other day, I said, "Honey, in your wildest dreams, you ever believe I'd be doing this?" She said, "Larry, in my wildest dreams, you don't even show up." But see, I just think we ought to lighten up and have more fun. Wouldn't you agree? Absolutely. And I think we've forgotten that having a good time is a good, solid business principle. Folks, I've spoken to all kinds of groups and associations and organizations and businesses, and this is one of the things I have discovered. If you love what you do and have a good time doing it, you'll figure out all on your own how to be excellent at it. And if you hate what you do and aren't having any fun at all, nothing in the world is ever going to make you any good at it. You got to love what you do and think it's a lot of fun. Wouldn't you agree? Say you bet. Yeah. And folks, if you just pay attention, it's easy to have a good time. I mean, just start looking around. I was in Las Vegas, walking down the hall of this hotel, and I found this sign on the door. Now, I was very fortunate. It was brand new. It came right off. The sign said, "No exit. This is not an entrance." Now, what do you call a door you can't go in or out? A wall, I guess, right? I'm in a winery. I go into the restroom in the winery, and the sign on the wall says, "If this bathroom needs attention, please inform the tasting room staff." Visiting a friend in a hospital. I had to take this one. It says, "The obesity support group meeting has been moved to the cafeteria." Really, folks, just pay attention. There's funny stuff everywhere. I'm on the airplane one day and I'm reading the in-flight magazine. You ever look at those? If you've ever seen one on every airline, you see the very same ad. It's an ad for logo watches. Have you seen that one? I decided I had to have one of those watches, but I wanted one exactly like the one in the ad. I wanted it to say, "Your logo here." So I tore the ad out, put my money with it, sent it into the company. About 2 weeks later, a lady from the company called and said, "Sir, you don't seem to understand." I said, "What is it I don't understand?" She said, "You're supposed to put your logo here." I said, actually, that's exactly what I want you to do. She said, what do you want us to do? I said, put your logo here. She said, listen, it's not our logo, it's your logo. I said, now see, you've complicated things. Type Y-O-U-R-L-O-G-O-H-E-R-E, put it on the front of the watch and mail it to me. She said, why are you doing that? I said, because that's funny. She said, sir, that is not funny. See, it is funny. And the funniest thing is to be wearing your watch, sitting on the airplane. And you see the guy in the seat next to you reading that ad, and you just say, hey, I got me one of those. Now, that's the only time I like to talk to people on airplanes. I hate to talk to people on airplanes. I don't know about you all, but I always sit down next to somebody who wants to tell me their whole life story. And folks, I just don't care. So I came up with a guaranteed way to make sure that nobody on an airplane ever talks to you. I designed these dummy book covers. Now, I don't have any of these with me today, or I'd give you all some of these, and some of y'all might need some of these. But I'll guarantee you, if they see, and they just wrap around any paperback book you're reading, and if they see one of these book covers, I will guarantee you they won't talk to you. Now, let me tell you what the first one says. It says, how to sell insurance to people on airplanes. Now, you all know that one works, don't you? How to sue the person in the seat next to you on the airplane. And my favorite, finding love on an airplane. I'll guarantee you, if you just put one of these down on the armrest, nobody's going to talk to you on that flight. But just look around, folks. It's easy to have a good time. A couple of years ago, my wife and I bought this house. Y'all remember the movie The Money Pit? We bought that house. And we were fixing it up, and I was in town for a few days, and my wife is a manager of this store that was right next door. They were building it right next door to this big bed and bath store. I said, why don't you and I meet over there at that bed and bath store, look around and try to find something for the house that we're redecorating. She said, sounds good. So as we walk through the bed and bath store, I find this huge display. It is a display of these little bitty plungers. Folks, what do you do with a plunger 10 inches tall? Obviously, you cannot use it in the traditional way. You get your hand all messy, so what do you do with something like that? Now, it came in lots of different colors, had a little crystal handle, and I'm just standing there trying to figure out what you do with it. And I asked my wife, I said, what do you do with something like that? And she said, I don't know, put that down. I said, no, I got to figure this out. I said, obviously, the manufacturer had something in mind when they made this. She said, Larry, we didn't come in here to buy little bitty plungers, so let's just move on. And I said, no, besides that, I think I got it figured out. She said, all right, what would you do with something like that? And I said, look right here. She said, you need to get that off your head. I said, well, it's stuck pretty good. Think I'm going to wear it. She said, you're not wearing that plunger. She said, Larry, I've been listening to you speak for years. I've heard all your stories. And Larry, they're all funny, but they all make a point. She said, Larry, it doesn't make a point. I said, well, sure it does. Look right there. So besides, I can do that European thing, pull it over here. She said, well, just get that off your head. And about that time, I hear 4 clerks cracking up over here. I said, that's it. I'm buying this plunger. She said, you don't need that plunger. I said, in my business, I have learned if I can make 4 people laugh, I can make 4,000 people laugh. She said, well, just get it off your head. So, now, it does leave a little hickey up there. Guys, you want to find yourself a lot of trouble, you go home tonight with a 4-inch hickey on the top of your head. So that night, I take it home, and I always carry this stuff around in this little bag, and I said, you know, what if I lost this bag? Because one time I left the bag in the back of a cab in New York, and I said, you know, by then I might have figured out something to do with the plunger, and I will have lost it, and stores don't carry stuff forever. I may go back for another one. They may not have any. Do me a favor. You're going to be right there tomorrow. Just run next door and get me another plunger, kind of like a backup plunger. Well, she's not wild about the idea, but she agrees to do it. So the next day, she comes home with this plunger. Now, the problem is, it's a defective plunger. It won't stick to my head. So I said, you know, this was no good. Do me one more favor. You're going to be there tomorrow anyway. Just run over next door and exchange it for me. Again, she's not wild about it, but she loves me. So the next day, she's standing in the return line. She hears them ask the lady in front of her, what is your reason for return? Now, don't get ahead of me on this one, all right? Finally, it's her turn. She sets the plunger up on the counter. The lady looks at it and says, ma'am, we don't get a lot of plungers back. What is your reason for return? She's got nothing. When at that very moment, one of the clerks from a few days before walks in the little room, sees the plunger, and said, you know, we had a guy in here the other day, stuck one of those on his head. She said, that was my husband. This one won't stick. Now, what is the moral of that story? There isn't one. The point is, every once in a while, it's just okay to stop and have a good time. When you agree, say you bet. Yeah. Absolutely. You see, I believe when it quits being fun, you ought to quit. Wouldn't you agree with that? Smallest group I've ever spoken to in my whole life were 11 people. I had 10 vice presidents, 1 president. I made that statement, when it quits being fun, you ought to quit. One of the vice presidents says, just a minute, Larry, I quit, and walked out. Now, folks, I had to put a damper in a seminar in a hurry. I got news for you. I said, man, I think it's time for a little break. Came back about 20 minutes later, the president said, now, don't say anything like that again, all right? I just thought, how sad. You know, folks, just things happen. That's how life is. Names change. Places change. The key is we need to lighten up sometimes. And remember what our real job is, to serve our customers well. Isn't that right? Say you bet. Yeah. And as long as we do that, everything else, I believe, takes care of itself. You got to do something to just keep it in perspective. Don't let it get to you so much. What are you going to do to keep your life in perspective, your business in perspective? I do several things. Number one, I wear an exclamation point. I heard a speaker many years ago say we enter this life like a question mark, full of wonder and full of curiosity, and we leave it like a period, as if we've got all the answers. I said, if I've got to spend my whole life like a punctuation mark, I want it to be an exclamation point. Because I want to be reminded every single day, folks, life is a hoot, and it's about that long. And we need to have a good time. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. I'm walking out the back door of my house on a series of speeches. My son and the rest of my family are all standing there. My son turns to me and says, Dad, I have yet to figure out why anybody would pay you to come talk to him. I said, what a nice thing for you to say. I said, I've been listening to you speak. He said, I've been listening to you speak for a long time, Dad. I've heard every speech. I know your 17 principles. I've heard you tell people to make it more simple, Dad. And yet, Dad, I think you've complicated life. I don't think you know what it takes to be successful anymore. I said, you know, you're 19 years old. You got life whipped. Why don't you tell me what it takes, son, if you've got it figured out? He said, I'm about to, Dad, and you ought to write this down because it's good. He said, Dad, when you mess up, big deal. Just admit it, fix it, and move on. Other than that, life's a party. You know what? My son's right. How many of y'all ever messed up? Big deal. How many of y'all plan on messing up again? See, big deal. What he said is key. Admit it. That's called taking responsibility. Fix it and move on. Other than that, life is a party. And we've got to remember, folks, life's short. It's just too short. We need to enjoy ourselves. Keep it in perspective. Now, I wear the exclamation point to keep it in perspective. I think there's something else, though. I think it takes words. I believe words are important. I know words influence people. Words have influenced you. Might have been the words of a parent, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, minister, teacher, coach, first boss, I don't know. But I've never met anyone that can't remember a time in their life when someone said something to them that didn't influence their lives. In my lives, the words that helped me keep my life in perspective were the words of my heroes, because when I was growing up, I had heroes. Y'all have heroes growing up? My heroes were Tarzan, Superman, and the Lone Ranger. Y'all remember Tarzan? Man of very few words. Tarzan really only had one good word. The word was ungawa. But it was a good word, because Tarzan could be in any situation, and when you heard him say ungawa, you knew exactly what he was talking about. Tarzan could eat a banana, peel that banana down, take a big bite out of that banana, look at that banana and say, ungawa. You knew that was a good banana. Tarzan would see Cheetah, and he would say, Cheetah, ungawa, and Cheetah would come and sit right by him. Now, why didn't Cheetah just think he was saying good banana? See, folks, that's a good word. Tarzan saw Jane for the very first time and said, ungawa. You know what that means. And sometimes life is just going to kick you in the head. Only one thing you can do is just step back and say, ungawa. But you think Tarzan was a hero. Now, Superman was a hero. When I was a little boy, I'd tie a towel around my neck, be my cape. Any of y'all ever do that? You did that last night, didn't you? Put that towel around my neck, I'd run through the house, I'd jump off all the furniture, and I'd say, look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, no, it's Superman, up, 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 and away. I'd go outside. I told you, I grew up on a chicken farm. I'd jump off all those stupid chicken houses, and I'd say, look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, no, it's Superman, up, 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 and away. Till finally, after 40 years of yelling that, I got to where I could do that backwards. So it doesn't really come out look, L-O-O-K, but it comes out cool, K-O-O-L. It's not it's, I-T-S, comes out S-T-I. So it doesn't really sound like look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, no, it's Superman, up, 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 and away. What actually comes out is this. Cool, puniet isk, sta drib, sta enelpon, stanamrapus, poo-poo-poo denawa. Now, folks, this will work for you. Because, I mean, you can be having a terrible day. This is all you do. You go into the bathroom. Now, you want to do it by yourself. You look in the mirror, you give it your very best bad day sort of look, and you just say, hey, poo-poo-poo denawa. It'll put your day in perspective. You think Tarzan and Superman are heroes? My number one hero of all time is the Lone Ranger. Do y'all remember the Lone Ranger? I love the Lone Ranger, and I know stuff about the Lone Ranger most people do not know. I know that the Lone Ranger's real name, not Clayton Moore, who just played the Lone Ranger, but the name of the Texas Ranger, who later became the Lone Ranger, his name was John Reed. John Reed had a great nephew, and the great nephew's name was Britt Reed, and Britt Reed was the Green Hornet. The Green Hornet is the great nephew of the Lone Ranger. What a family. And I know that every episode started with that music. Can you hear that music right now playing in your heads? I bet you can. I heard the other day that the definition of a true intellectual is a person who can hear the William Tell Overture and not think of the Lone Ranger. I don't even want to know people like that. And then I remember the words, because every episode started with the very same words. On a fiery horse with a speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hardy hi-ho silver, the Lone Ranger. With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, this daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early West. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear, when from out of the past come the thundering hoofbeats of the great horse Silver, as the Lone Ranger rides again. Man, I could be having a terrible day, nothing going right. I remember that music, I remember those words, it makes me think I can go out there and lick the world. Of course, then I remember, at the end of every single Lone Ranger episode, there would be one guy. One guy who would walk up to a small group of people, look off into the mountains where Tonto and the Lone Ranger had just ridden, and he would say, who was that masked man? Where has this guy been? I mean, really, at this point, the whole world knows that was the Lone Ranger. We got one guy, not a clue. And they'd say, well, that was the Lone Ranger, and wanted me to reach in their pocket and pull out something. What would it be? Sure, a silver bullet. A silver bullet that the Lone Ranger had left with one of them. A silver bullet that was a symbol of what he believed and stood for, was all about. A silver bullet that even though he was long gone, it stayed behind to leave its mark. I thought a long time about the legend of the Lone Ranger. I said, there's a lot of good stuff in there. I said, maybe the most significant symbol is Tonto, because I think we all need a faithful companion who will stand beside us and watch our backs. I said, that's pretty good, but it can't be it. And I thought for a while, maybe the most significant symbol was the mask, because I think we all need to do as much good for as many people as possible, and it doesn't matter if they recognize who we are or if we get the credit. I said, that's pretty good too, but that can't be it either. And then I thought for a while it might be the great white horse silver, because I think we all need first-class transportation. Then decided it couldn't be any of those things, because all of those things left when the Lone Ranger left. He only ever left one thing behind, and that was a silver bullet. So that has to be the most significant symbol. That has to be it. And yet this is what you do. This is what I do. We all leave silver bullets behind. Things that represent what we stand for, believe in, and are all about. They come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes a silver bullet is a black plastic squeeze bottle with hot pink writing and a hot pink straw. Sometimes a silver bullet is your product and service. It's your handshake. It's your phone call. It's your eye contact. It's your smile. But we have to be reminded every time we come in contact with anyone for any reason at any time, we leave a mark on them of what we believe in and stand for. And what I've always done in the past was to give everybody in my audience a silver bullet to remind them of that. And then I discovered how hard it was to go through airports with bullets in your pocket. In Dallas, Texas, I was going through security. I dropped my keys, my pocket knife, my change, and my silver bullet down in the tray. Lady looks down and sees the bullet, calls the police. Big Texas cop, 6'8", had boots up to here. Walks up, reaches down the tray, pulls the bullet out, holds it right down my face and said, boy, what is that? I wanted to say, that's a bullet, stupid. He's a cop. I figured he ought to know, don't you think? But I didn't. I just said, sir, that is a bullet. He said, what do you do with a bullet? I said, I'm a professional speaker. I tell the story about the Lone Ranger. You know, on a fiery horse with a speed, a light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty eye, high silver, Lone Ranger, faithful in companion. He said, hold it, Kimosabe. He said, don't you ever do this again. Consequently, I've never done it again, and I don't have a bullet to give you all here today. I do have a couple of things to give you. If you like that little statement by my son, when you mess up, big deal, admit it, fix it, and move on. Other than that, life's a party. There's some of those out there. I also have a sheet that's called What I Believe. If you all want to pick one of those up, they're all out there. There's plenty for everybody. So pick one of those up if you'd like. You know, folks, I end every speech pretty much the very same way. It's especially appropriate to end a convention with this. It's with one good line. And when I give you this line, don't think I'm over it. Just think I'm reasonably close. But the line is a good line. It's not original with me. And you may have heard it before, but it says this: after all is said and done, more is said than done. That's a good line, isn't it? After all is said and done, more is said than done. A lot has been said here at this convention by many other speakers, many other sessions, out in the hallways. I've said a lot up here this morning, but let me make you this guarantee, and it's the only guarantee I ever make any audience. Nothing said here matters. It's true. Nothing I've said is going to make a nickel's worth of difference. Nothing anyone else said up here is going to make a nickel's worth of difference. We want it to, because I believe we all grew up believing what I consider to be the most profound, dangerous lie ever perpetuated. Raise your hand real quick if you ever heard this lie. Knowledge is power. They lied to you. Knowledge is not power. It's the implementation of knowledge that is power. What you know doesn't make any difference. What you do with what you know can change your life forever, but it takes action. What happens here at this convention, if it stays here, who cares? It has to go back and work on the streets. Isn't that right? Say you bet. Yeah. Absolutely. So when should you get started? Well, it's like the guy who goes to his retirement party. At his retirement party, his friends say, what are you going to do when you retire? He said, I have 3 goals for retirement. First of all is I'm going to travel more with my wife. She's retiring. We're going to go have some fun. Second, I'm going to play some golf. Third, I'm going to spend time with my grandchildren. They run into this friend about a year later. They said, how's retirement going? He says, going great. I've been in 25 states with my wife, traveling everywhere. We've been all over Canada. We've been in Mexico. We're getting ready to go to Europe. We're having more fun you can't possibly imagine. And I've been playing a lot more golf. In fact, I have shaved 5 strokes off my golf game. Really, there's only one thing that I set out to do that I haven't been able to do. They said, what's that? He said, play with my grandchildren. They said, well, why haven't you done that? He said, I don't have any grandchildren. He said, why not? He said, I don't know. He said, I got 3 kids, all of them perfectly healthy, fully grown, happily married, but for some reason they don't have any kids and I don't have any grandchildren. So this guy put together a plan to get him some grandchildren. This was his plan. He called his kids and their spouses over to his house on Thanksgiving Day, had them standing around a big round table. He said, now before I say the blessing and we sat down, I got a real quick announcement. Yesterday I opened up a $100,000 trust fund in the name of my very first grandchild. Will you please bow your heads? He said the blessing, when he said amen and looked up, is just him and his wife standing there. The moral of the story is this: if you were ever going to get started, you ought to get started right now. I appreciate my time with you here this morning. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks. Thank you all. Thanks. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do.